Warning. This podcast is about to open the sealed section of spirituality. Hey you, yeah you, we see you, you divine human being.
And we are calling you to come home.
We are ready to talk about the real shit. We're going to get real about life as a divine human being.
The good, the not so great, spirituality and taboo. Divinely Human is the podcast that's all about what it means to be human in a spiritual context.
We know it's not just about being spiritual, it's about being human too.
And that means changing poopy nappies and channeling angels.
Sometimes even at the same time. It's time for us to stop making other people's noise our own soundtrack of life.
Let's make some waves together so that we can all ride them together and create deep resonance, a sense of home in this crazy world.
Pour yourself a coffee
or a glass of wine if that's your potion,
and sit down with your new favorite spiritual sisters
as we go on a journey together into what it means to be
a divine human being
on this spiritual journey.
Hi, and welcome back to another episode on the Divinely Human podcast. My name is Tanita.
And I'm Aleisha.
Thanks for coming back and hanging out with us, guys. We really appreciate it. And this episode, we're going to continue our astrology series. Last week, we chatted all about Mercury and Pluto retrograde, and it was such a fun episode. Literally, I was just cutting up little shorts to post on social media, and I was like, there's so many juicy things to pull from here, and I really want to hear from you guys. How did you enjoy that episode? Let us know if you learned something new. Send us a DM. We'd love to hear from you. But we're going to continue the series and share more of the things that we've learned from our own personal journey, because I don't know about you, but I definitely learn through other people's experience too. And I think that is the best way to learn, is understanding how somebody else has implemented different things into their life, what's worked for them, what hasn't. So we're going to be sharing a little bit about what we really valued in our own personal journey when it comes to astrology and how that's impacted us, what we've really loved learning about, and maybe I also want to get into like what we don't necessarily vibe with as well, because I think like anything, you can learn about certain things and not everything is always aligned for us, and I want to make that okay for some of us today. So yeah, let's get into it.
I can't wait. I think something that just stuck out to me listening to you speak was how you said about how you like learning through other people is so helpful. And that is one of the biggest things that I have learned about myself the last few years, deep diving into astrology, is just hearing other people's experiences has been the biggest learning curve for me. It's helped me so much more than sitting down and taking an online course or something, just being in other people's energy and hearing how they have adapted to it, how they resonate with it. It's just been magic for me. So I'm really excited to dive into this.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, when I first started learning about all of the planets, I was like, I found it really hard to personalize it. So I made sure that I watched people interpreting celebrities charts and things to see how it could actually cross over to a personality. Because I think sometimes you learn about these planets and you're like, how can they have a personality? And sometimes it is hard to bring it into reality and weave it into your own life. So seeing how it's expressed in other people really genuinely helped me. I've also got a lot of planets in the first house, so a lot of the focus for this life is all about identity and like how I show up in the world, and seeing how other people do that is really beneficial for me. I'm curious to see how you learnt about astrology, because I know we all have different learning styles. So mine was really understanding other people's charts. What about you? How did you go through that learning process?
This is so funny that we're having this conversation, because I was having to go into this exact conversation last week. I had a branding call, and I had to tell my story of how I got into having my space and my business, and it actually started with astrology, which is really beautiful. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Which is funny because as soon as it became like a business, then I wasn't necessarily offering anything to do with astrology first up, like offerings wise, but it came to be because of astrology. And I actually didn't start with interpreting my own chart, which sounds really crazy to even listening to myself say that now. It's so weird. I'm like, what the fuck? But I actually, the first time that I dipped my toe into it and what actually made me fall in love with it was interpreting the charts for the full and the new moons instead of my own, which sounds crazy. So I started there and so like I started there, and once I kind of felt like I got like a handle on that, it honestly wasn't until like 12 months after I had started decoding like transits that I then jumped into my own chart, because people were like, oh, where's this?
Oh,
where's this in your chart? Where's that? And I'm like, fuck, I have no idea. Like, I don't know. So that was really interesting. And again, like I just learnt from mainly other astrologers. I wasn't really a book person when it comes to like I love reading, I love novels, I love all that stuff. But when it comes to learning things, I just can't do it from a book, and I've never been able to do that. So for me, it's just off having certain muses in the industry or in this realm and just learning off them and the internet pretty much, to be honest with you. That was like the first, until I went and I like started doing like proper training, which was only literally like 18 months ago. I had learned like everything that I know online just from various sources, various astrologers, and still to this day I can say that I've still learned more from that, I guess those outlets, than it has been ever from sitting down and taking a course, which I mean speaks for itself.
Yes, I agree. I find that so fascinating that you started with like the moon and then of course like moved to transits, because I found the transits so hard to absorb, like, and I'm still like, I really have to think about it. With interpreting birth charts, I'm like, that comes really natural because I've spent so much time learning about that. And I remember I learned about all the planets. I learned about the zodiacs first, and then the planets, and then the houses, and then went to really strengthen my confidence in melding all of those together. And transits was only something that I really started looking into in the past like 12 months. So I find that fascinating. You're like the opposite. Like it's kind of different. That. But yeah, I know, right? But I was the same. I really love astrology books, but I definitely learnt majority through astrology teachers online and reading different blogs and following different people. I think that for some of the astrology books, especially the traditional ones, they have such an outdated point of view. And I really love the way that people weave their own point of view into astrology now. I think that's so fucking potent and magical. And I love like learning about that too, because I think that astrology, like I said in the last episode, it is a social science. It's something that we see to continue to influence our society, and our society has changed. And so our perspective of it has also got to evolve. I think that's really funny. But what placement in your chart did you first kind of stumble upon?
Me,
do you remember?
Yeah, it was my top, like my sun, moon, rising. And I think it probably is for a lot of people. Yeah, so obviously sun, like I've always known that since I was like a kid.
Yeah.
And it's so strange. I actually used to have astrology books around my house growing up. I don't know who owned them, whether it was my sisters or my mum, but there was always astrology books around. So I remember like reading about my sun sign a lot as a child, and then once I kind of found astrology again, I dipped my feet into like my big three, in particular, and I was like, okay, we've got some more texture here. We've got some, because I've always said, ever since I was a child, like I don't feel like a Virgo. I just don't resonate a lot. Well, I mean, so you're probably sitting there going, fuck off, you're the biggest Virgo ever.
Yeah. literally, but I understand where you're coming from too.
You're like, if she tells me one more time to change something on the graphics, like, I am going to blow.
I'm like, girl, it's fine. We can post this without the thing that we posted with last time. You're like, no, it must be perfect.
Honestly.
I love you for that. I really do.
I guess, like, yeah. So, yeah, that actually is the perfect example is, like, yeah, outwardly to other people, I probably do present as a Virgo. But internally, I'm like, that's not me. That's not who I am at my core. And then, like, learning about, like, my moon and then my ascendant was just like, oh, okay, I've got some more to work with now. Like, I actually resonate with them all together, working together like that. So that was mine. I'm interested to know what yours was.
I love that. Big three has always been like there. I remember I used to get gifted heaps of astrology books, and it's so funny because I don't really remember. I have a horrible memory, but I really don't remember talking that much about astrology. But obviously all of my friends throughout high school would see me as this very spiritual person, which comes as a shock to me, but I would always get gifted like astrology books. And so I knew my big three pretty early on, but when I started understanding the natal chart more so, it was my North Node placement that I really, and I still am continuing to dive into that. That's probably one of my favorite placements. But in saying that, I think the most valuable placement that I've learned about is my fourth house, because it's that balance for me, and understanding that the opposite house of where you're wanting to kind of expand and open up, the opposite side of that is the balancing factor, is the foundation, is the thing that you need, the pillars that you need in order to, you know, venture up and expand outwards. And I always felt really small because I wasn't connecting with my North Node placement, and I felt really out of place in my life. I felt like, how can I even step into this? And I didn't understand that the foundation of the home, which is the fourth house, the opposite of the 10th which is where my North Node is in the 10th, is so valuable and important. And I kind of had this very like stubborn outlook on like, well, I want to be where my North Node is, and I didn't necessarily want to focus on the home. And it's continuing to provide lessons that bring me and pull me down into it. So I think that's really fascinating.
What sign is your North Node in?
In Leo.
Oh, yeah, okay. I feel like I know your chart off the back of my hand, but then I forget it. And then when you say it, I'm like, oh, yeah, we've spoken about this before.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So Leo, North Node, 10th house, and then Aquarius, 4th house. And I've also got Neptune and Uranus in the 4th house as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like the nodes are really important, and they have been something, I agree, that has been really... it's kind of stabilizing to understand and learn about, because it's like our anchor, and then like where we're shooting for, or like who we truly, where we want to be on a soul level as well. It's like that beautiful tipping point of like trying to balance the both of them out. But if you don't know like what those two energies are, then how could you ever balance them or navigate from one to the other, or like learn the lessons that either carry as well? I find that it's just crucial, absolutely crucial. And for me as well, like especially with my nodes, not so much like North Node, but definitely South Node. It really explains a lot when it comes to triggers that come up for me, things that come up where I'm like, that's really uncomfortable. Like, I don't want to deal with that. Like, it really supplies like the foundations of why that's coming up, because of like what that energy is that I'm carrying through, right?
Yeah, that's so fascinating. I'm curious to see where Chiron kind of comes into all of this for you, because I know for a lot of the time that I've been learning about astrology, I've been on a very big self-healing quest. And when I learn about Chiron, that was like the biggest breath of fresh air that I felt, even though it was like so intimidating to see that placement was like so true for me. And I don't think I felt that way about any of my placements until I saw where my Chiron was. I'm curious to see what that was like for you, because I know we both vibe with Chiron.
It was really scary and really confronting as well, because it was not necessarily something, like when I found out about it, it wasn't necessarily something that I was ready to face. My Chiron is in Leo in the 8th, and that's a big thing, and that's two very big placements as well, like mixing, obviously, like my whole most of my 8th house is like Leo. Like that in itself is really confronting. especially growing up being like a very quiet, very, very shy, very, very like I would never speak unless spoken to sort of personality. Was really confronting when I found out that my Chiron was in Leo. And I wasn't ready to work with it for a really long time. I think that I've only truly been ready since probably last year, to be honest with you, to fully step into like deeply healing that placement and then utilizing that to really become my like more of my higher self, and also to like lift others up through healing that as well. It's been really empowering mostly, but really scary. And I think that Chiron definitely sits in like probably like the top 3 placements that I feel like everybody should be aware of.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I echo that so loudly. I think it's such a powerful placement to get to know yourself, and while it is so confronting, I find it just as freeing, because knowing where that placement is and understanding some of the really deep lessons that you've come here to learn as a soul being expressed as a human can really help soften the blow to some capacity in my experience. And while it is still extremely confronting and sometimes a really hard pill to swallow, I think it's such a beautiful recognition that this is something that you're also meant to help other people with. And it's such a beautiful softening into like just knowing that the pain that you go through is also such like a gift for other people to see themselves in you as well, and feel that just like community and sisterhood and familyhood with going through similar lessons together. I find that really, really valuable, because I don't think we go through these lessons alone, and Chiron is a big one, but I definitely agree with you. It's like, I would very deeply encourage everyone to learn where theirs is.
It's almost like as well through Chiron we learn how inextricably linked that we are as a collective, because I mean, as you said, you know, that one of the purposes of moving through that placement and working with it is not just for yourself, but for the collective as well. And I just think that that's so beautiful because it takes us back to the understanding of oneness and the fact that we are all so linked. We are linked, whether we like it or not. You know, we are a part of the one collective that exists. So I think it's beautiful. I truly, truly do.
It takes us out of that victim mentality as well, right? Like learning about Chiron and seeing, from my own experience, is where a lot of trauma like I've endured in this lifetime. So knowing that, it was easy for me to be like, well, all of this bad stuff is happening, and I can see that mentality being very easily slipped into, right? It's like you think there's some karmic ties here and you must have done some bad shit in a past life, but that's so not true. And when you learn the other side to Chiron, you understand that like you are part of this group of souls that are ready to up level in some capacity and release that trauma, not just for yourself, but for the collective. And releasing that and recognizing that you're not in this alone is such a healing such a healing kind of thing to go through. So yeah, I think that's a really important side to Chiron that a lot of people also forget about.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it is forgotten about. Like, a lot of people don't even know about it either. I feel like it's never really spoken about unless there's a transit involving it, which is weird as well. I'm like, it's weird.
Well, I guess like a lot of the asteroids aren't really talked about though, you know?
Yeah, it just baffles me that, it's one of those things that you don't even need to add it onto your chart. It automatically generates when you generate your chart, yet no one really speaks about it. It's a bit strange.
It is a bit strange. It is a bit strange.
So one of the placements that I'm interested to know that like has been really difficult for you. I'm interested to know what that's been, but also like what it means for you as well and how you've navigated it.
I think my Saturn has been really hard to wrap my head around. I don't know. There's something about it that I'm just like, I think that the lessons of Saturn continue. I mean, all of the lessons of your placements continue to unfold throughout your life. But for me, I'm somebody who I like to have a reason for things. I like to have an experience to lean on for things. And my Saturn is, I'm going to bring up my chart. My Saturn is in the 6th house at 1 degrees in Taurus.
Oh, Taurus. I was wondering what Saturn group you were in. It reminds me of school groups. It's like, what Saturn group are you in? Saturn Aquarius.
I'm Taurus.
Right.
Yeah, it's crazy. So this is like 6 houses is all about routines and health and just your day to day. And so with Saturn there, I still want to understand how this impacts my life. And as I continue to grow older, I kind of start to see that influence. But for me, I've actually had a lot of trouble with understanding how to implement that for me in particular. But as we all know, I've had multiple run-ins with my health, especially with things like my fertility in the past 12 months. So that is starting to come into play in some capacity. And Taurus is a very feminine, grounded, sensual sign. So at 1 degrees there, I'm like, oh, you know, like just some placements, you just can't wrap your head around it yet. And that's how I feel with my Saturn placement. So yeah, I don't know. I'm curious to hear about you. Like what's one of those placements for you where you're like, oh.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you said about Saturn. I feel like it's difficult. It is really challenging. And it's one of those things where
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like it was, I as much as I hated my Saturn return, during that time, like I'd spend my whole life, well, not my whole life because I hadn't been like obviously studying my chart for my whole life, but for, a whole period of time before that, looking at astrology and looking at my natal chart, not understanding it. And then like when I went through my Saturn return, I was like, okay, like it kind of brought through a little bit of understanding about how it's actually serving me and what I'm here to do with that and how to work with it. But I truly don't believe that we will ever 100% understand it until we come to the end of our time here, because it's so, like, it's, for one, so slow moving and two, just so complex. I think that it is given quite a bad rap. I feel bad. I feel bad for him, but
poor Daddy Saturn.
Absolutely, because I feel like for how much you feel like it takes, it will give more in return. But it's just the lesson of truly seeing what language that is, that it wants to speak with you and how it wants to work with you, and what lens you want to see it through, but it's so fucking hard, like, because they're the toughest lessons in the world, and you just like, why is this happening to me? Like, it's just the worst. So no, I agree with that. I think Saturn, but also surprisingly, I really struggle with my Mercury placement at times. Yeah.
Really? That's fascinating.
Yeah, my Mercury is in Virgo. And
no wonder.
And I struggle with it because I feel like I kind of live my life, and at times a lot of the time I feel very unheard because my Mercury in Virgo being like the biggest perfectionist ever, like, so like everything needs to be structured and perfect and like linear. I feel so unheard at times because of it, because I'm like, have I not gotten my point across properly? Like, am I communicating properly? Like, why isn't anyone understanding what I'm saying? Like, so actually, I feel like I am in this wrestling match with my Mercury placement every day of my life, from like the smallest things to the biggest things. And I'm like, why does it have to be in fucking Virgo? I really struggle with it. It's just hard.
I find that so fascinating because you are one of the clearest, funniest communicators ever. Like, I'm like, if you're not being straight to the point, like, you are making me laugh. So I'm like, I don't see any struggle with that, because for me personally, with my Mercury placement, I've got it in Pisces. So getting my point across, like, I resonate with that struggle. Sometimes people have no idea what the fuck I'm saying, but I can see this whole elaborate thing in my mind. And I have a really hard time kind of bringing that out into a language that people will understand. So I think that it's funny you also have that kind of come across in terms of like not being able to be understood. But I think that is also the power of Mercury, because you are learning how to communicate better with not only your emotions, but like whatever planet is sitting next to it as well, if you've got any conjuncts. And so expressing that nature of the planet that's sitting next to it can sometimes add in another layer of like, you know, what's trying to come through in this lifetime for you. So I find that fascinating. But also Virgo is so fucking hard on themselves. Like, you got to give yourself a break.
It is, yeah. It actually, funnily enough, my Mercury sits in a Saturn decan. So there's like that. Yeah, okay. So it's like, even though my Mercury is in Virgo, Mercury is still kind of have that, it's going to have that, just for anyone listening, it's going to have that texture of like Saturn, like friction to it. So maybe that's why, like, even though everyone else is like, girl, you're fine, message received. And I'm like, I can't get my message across.
That's so interesting. That's so interesting. What is your moon sign again? Is it, I can't remember if you're an Aquarius rising or moon. Aquarius moon, okay. Well, yeah. I think like with that inner world and trying to express that out, I don't know about you, but my inner world is so different to my sun sign. And when I feel like I'm not being heard, it's really because my moon sign is like, nobody sees me. Like, nobody is really understanding who I am on the inside. And I think that's why it is powerful to learn about the moon, but it's also one of those ones where I think it's tough to find a way to express that properly. I don't know about you.
No, I find it tough too. I really do. I feel very misunderstood. Or like, I feel like I'm not connecting or getting like that energy across sometimes that I'm like wanting it to be. It's really hard to explain, but I really feel that.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that. I actually heard someone say, I can't remember, it was like a reel that I saw, and they were saying that their friend said, I'm really struggling to be in a world that wasn't made for me. And the friend replied and said, well, that's because the world wasn't made for you. You were made for the world. And I really feel this about Aquarius energy. I think that sometimes it's really hard for Aquarius placements to find their place on Earth. And it's not because that they're out of place. It's because they were made for this place to create a world that suits people like them. And we're seeing such an uprising in Aquarius energy. We've only just entered the age of Aquarius. So for those who have major Aquarius placements, it is a time of feeling out of place. But if anything, it's a call to create your version of heaven on earth, or your version of support on this earth, because it's a new wave of energy and vibration that's coming here. So it is going to feel out of place. I don't know. Does that make sense?
That makes all of the sense. Absolutely. I think that a lot of people will be feeling this and listening to this right now, and who do have strong Aquarius placements, thinking, thank you. Because, and also finally feeling really seen, because I feel seen. That's a big one. And yeah, I feel like we should do also an episode at one point about, we have done an Age of Aquarius episode.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my God. I'm going to scroll and try and find that and find what number it is.
Yeah, because for anyone listening to this who does have major placements, just listening to that will feel a little bit like home for you, and the energy that, is probably swirling around in the pits of your stomach right now, entering this new age and having to be confronted with, all of this change and innovation. And Aquarius is that, right? It's always off the cuff. It's always something new, something, creating something that's just going to help not just themselves, but everyone else. So I feel like that episode was, I remember, I'm getting flashbacks now. I'm like, yeah.
Yes. I think it was episode 26, Atlantis versus Now. Is history repeating itself?
Was that might be. If not, then if we have done any other episodes on it, we'll pop it in the show notes.
Fine.
But,
yes.
Yeah. Big one. Big one, I feel.
Yeah, I feel that too, big time. I'm curious to see what zodiac sign, I know we did an episode that hasn't been released yet, but I want to bring it through in this episode a little bit. What zodiac sign do you vibe least with in your chart?
Oh, okay, cool. So not other people, just just with me.
In your own chart.
Oh, God. It would have to be my Leo with Chiron, because I'm like, that's not me. But also it makes sense. It makes sense because it's obviously the stuff that I'm here to learn and embody. But yeah, probably Leo. But also at times, I do still struggle with my Virgo. And I know, guys, I know this sounds crazy to you all, and I know you probably won't understand it, but I truly do. I vibe with it the least, and it's what most of the time, my Virgo traits and tendencies is what I beat myself up for the most. I just feel like I'm a burden a lot of the time on the world because of it. I'm like, I don't want to make anyone feel bad, but I'm like, I just can't help myself. I have to tell them, or I have to express how I need something done, especially in from a relationship point of view. It can feel quite hindering at times to have those Virgo placements. What about you?
I feel bad about that because my little Pisces soul is I see so much beauty in that, and I find Virgo has such an important place on this earth, and I understand that sometimes you may feel like the landing is too harsh, and sometimes the throwback can be too harsh on you as well, because not everybody is so accustomed with understanding boundaries and, you know, understanding what's being asked of them. And sometimes it's hard. And that's not because of you, that's because of them. So I think it's important that Virgos continue to ask for what they want and create those boundaries. But I know, and I can imagine, it would be really hard to kind of set that standard for other people.
This is a therapy session that I didn't know that I needed, but I needed. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Oh, that's so funny. Well, for me, it's actually like my second house is ruled by Sagittarius. I don't have anything in my second house. It's like empty, but I don't really vibe with that at all. Growing up, I felt really quite restricted when it came to money, and I know like now I've been working in the financial planning industry for a couple of years, and I feel like for most of my life I've been very clear on my values, whereas Sagittarius kind of comes off with this energy of like, yes, being clear, but also being really free and sometimes like not really
flaky.
Flaky. Yes. I was trying to be nice about it. But yes, flaky and like not coming through always.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just don't vibe with that. But I am starting to see that spending habits can be a little bit erratic sometimes. And like, it is what it is. But I don't really vibe with that. I don't really like that.
That's so funny. That's so funny. But also, maybe the point of that placement for you as well is to help others. Like, obviously you work in that industry as well. So like you are also guiding other people through that who may very much operate from that area of like being a little bit I'm just going to do a whole episode with hand movements, a little bit when it comes to their own financial stability and things like that. And you're literally helping people do that. You're supporting and you're guiding people to do that. So maybe that's a reflection of that aspect of your life as well coming through, not necessarily just like what you're holding, but also what you're here to help guide and direct others through as well. So don't think it's just you. I mean, this is coming from a Virgo who's like, it's their problem, not mine. And I'm not the problem.
I'm not to blame. Yeah, I am not the problem.
Girl, it ain't you. It's them.
I'll take that. I'll totally take that. And it's funny because like my fiance is a Sagittarius sun, and I swear to God, like when it comes to money, we're so different. And it's so funny, but yeah, I think that's really funny. I don't know. I think that when it comes to learning about astrology and in particular our own birth charts, I mean, that's really what we've covered in this episode today. It is important to just go with your curiosity, because I have found in my own experience that when somebody teaches me a placement that I genuinely do not have any interest in or have no like affliction to learning, it's not going to land. And it doesn't matter how long it takes you to understand, because you are still continuously uncovering layers and different perspectives and, you know, understandings about each different placement. So I would encourage every one of you to not only, you know, explore the ones that we've talked about, but any that you are genuinely curious about, because that's when you're going to start to unlock a lot of the gifts. But in saying that, and in the same breath, I also want to say that your chart doesn't actually rule your life, you do. And I continue to stand by that no matter how much I understand about my own chart. I think it's so cool to see the placements and how they play out in life. But I personally, and I know this might sound crazy and paradoxical, but I actually don't want my chart to rule my life. I want to be able to explore and let my desires and curiosity lead me rather than feeling restricted by some capacity. And that doesn't take away from the beauty and the understanding that I've learned and the healing that I've learned from my own chart. If anything, it's enhanced it.
Said by a true Piscean. No, I agree with you. And I think that at times the concept of having to like fit into every single box of your chart, not that I'm saying that a chart is like confining, it can be very much, freeing, but I'm just saying like you may not resonate with some things and it might sort of push you into certain energies that may not align with you, and that's completely fine. Like you don't have to do what your horoscope says or what your chart says, or you don't even need to align with who it's sort of unraveling like who you are and what it's showing you. It's not always a direct mirror. I find it's more so like, I always envision it like you're in a room full of mirrors and you're also holding up a mirror. So you're getting like the refraction of it bouncing off all the other ones as well. So it's like, that's really important to remember as well when it comes to this. And, nothing is final. It's also a journey. Your chart is a journey. And, it's not like this is who you are. It's like, this is who is unfolding in this lifetime. It's never final. So I think that's really important to express as well. But I've had so much fun unwrapping this and just speaking about it freely. I love being able to share on this, and also like tapping into our own personal journeys with this energy as well, and like the different energies that we have in our charts has been really, I feel like I've just had a therapy session, so thank you for that.
No worries.
It's been great. As always, guys, you can find us on all of the platforms. I don't even need to list them. Just any platform, you will find us. So go and find us everywhere. And also, if this resonated with you, we'd love if you could share it. Take a screenshot, tag us, share it. We'd love to see who is listening and learn more about you guys as well, and hear about how you liked the episode or any other previous episodes that you've listened to. But we're so grateful to have you here as beautiful listeners and beautiful members of our family. So thank you for being here, and we will catch you guys next week.